G'day and welcome back to Pasco's Garage. Yes, it has been a long time and thank you for everyone who's commented asking where I am, what's been going on. Well, a lot's been going on. I've been working pretty hard, a lot of stuff happening with the kids. I've also been to America on a nice holiday. I went to the basketball. Went to Star Wars Galaxy's Edge in Disneyland.
Make sure your entire party stays together.
So I've had the car inspected and I've got a really nice detailed report back from the engineer. He goes through a lot of stuff he does on the car, which is reassuring for me. Ticked off a lot of the work I've done, which I was pretty chuffed with. There's a few things that I needed to go through. I'll go through them quickly now. So the car was too low. We already knew that. The car was too noisy. We already knew that. One thing I wasn't aware of is when I drove it out there, I noticed that the car had a bit of a vibration. I had a few of these comments mentioned to me from you guys, and one of them was the diff pinion angle on the car. Now, diff pinion angle should be between 1 and 3 degrees, and I had 4 to 5 degrees. So what I did is I just raised up the gearbox. I got some aluminium spacers and lifted the gearbox up into about an inch and a half. And what that did, that reduced that angle. So I was within specs, and then I've driven it since then, and it's been really good. So thank you for everyone for mentioning that. But why do you have to do this? If you think about it, I've got new engine, new gearbox, new suspension, new exhaust, new wiring, new fuel system, new wheels, new tyres. So a lot's going into the car, so that's all got to be checked. So when you sell the car, it's really important. You've got to have, well, I've got to feel comfortable if I do sell a car. Not that I'm going to, because I love it. But when it's registered and all that stuff, I want to know that if something does happen, because it attracts attention from the neighbours, so God knows what's, and I've got a lot of thumbs up on the road, so I really need to know that its car's going to be safe, and if I do get pulled over by the police, that it's right. So with the engine, what it states is if the car has more power than standard. So for my car, it's extra if it's more than 30 kilowatts. Yes, it's got a lot more than 30 kilowatts extra than standard. So I could go through all the specs, but like give you an example, if it's over 2.5 litres, even if it's just 20% more power, you've got to have an engineer look at the car. Got to make sure the gearbox is real, no issues with it. The regs state that you can have any gearbox in the car as long as it's structurally, there's no structural changes to the car to make it fit. Suspension, as long as it meets roadworthy and it's all right. The exhaust, it cannot allow gas into the cabin, which is pretty straightforward. It can't have any protrude, so you can burn yourself. And noise as well. It's got to be supported correctly. It's not fouling on any components. It must have the correct ground clearance, which you'll see I didn't. And the noise. Well, I've already had the neighbour over here complaining about the noise. So you'll see it gets measured and it's way too loud. The wiring, got to make sure the wiring doesn't foul. It's got to be secure every 600 millimeters. The fuel system, which I touch on in the video. Tyres, you can increase tyre size by the tyre section as it touches the road by 30% and rims by 25%. These are some of the things I needed to know. So seatbelts as well, I'll touch on that in the video as well. And I've got a few things left which I'll touch on at the end of the video. So I hope you enjoy it. Alright, I'm at the first part of getting the engineering done for the car. So I'm at a weighbridge now. So you can see here, got the car on the weighbridge. It's just weighed the front and rear of the car. And here's the weights of the car. Just under a ton. I've just dropped off the car, so they're going to test the emissions, the brakes and the noise. Not sure how it's all going to go. So I'll hopefully get a report back in a few days, and I might need to do some adjustments. So I've got the report back. Really nice detailed report. I'm very happy with it. So the first area he focused on was the clearances, making sure that the engine and gearbox that was fitted that was replaced has got a lot of clearance. So you can see all the clearance measures that were taken around the mounts and stuff like that. I had to raise the car because it was too low, so I've fitted these camber plates to the car, which are awesome. So you can see here it was quite low at the front and the back. So I fitted rear springs back to it as well to raise it back up. You can see now it looks quite high, but I'll fix that once I get it engineered. I had some clearance issues with the exhaust as well. You can see, even though I raised it back up, it still was quite low. They tested the noise of the exhaust, and it was way too loud. So you can see there it was 95 decibels. That was at idle. The limit in 101 decibels at 4,000 RPM. So the limit is 96 decibels at 4,000 RPM. So this is what I've done now. I've put in another muffler in the car. So here you can see the downpipe coming down to a muffler. You can see where I've cut it all up again, the hot dog, and here's the new muffler just underneath the back seat. And then it goes up over the diff into another muffler. So there's the rear muffler. That had a clearance issue as well. It was banging. Even though once I raised the car, it did create some clearance, it was still banging. So I cut that back up into all different pieces. Went through the exhaust system about 2 or 3 times. And this is the rear muffler. I tacked it all back together. And once I had it all done, fitted it to the car, made sure it fitted properly, painted it, and then fitted it back to the car. The fuel system had to be checked as well, but that was all really good. I'd use all new piping in that anyway. There was an issue with the space between the wheel and the hub. You can see there's a bit of a gap. Even though the bolts hold it on, I needed these hub rings. So these are hub rings. You can just buy them. They're not that inexpensive. So the hub rings here, they go between the wheel and the hub. You can see they're spaced out. They also had to check the bolts to make sure that the taper was correct between the bolt and the wheel. Another area that I needed to focus on was, I didn't even realise that I had to worry about this, was rear seat belts. So the seat belts that were originally in this car are just adjustable lap belts. So when you've got more horsepower in the car, you can't have that. You've got to have retractable seat belts that lock in place. So I had to fit them. So I've bought these ones, and after a lot of research, I found that VK Commodore ones will fit. Now the VK Commodore ones, they mount on a 45-degree angle leaning forward, and it's important to have that angle right because the ball which locks the retractor in place needs to operate on a certain angle. Generally they're 90 degrees straight up and down, and mounted 90 degrees to whatever panel they mount to. But mine was 90 degrees and leaning forward 45 degrees. So this is the new retractable seat belt that I got. So see, that's the part number there. It's got a little yellow tag in it to stop the thing retracting all the way. The kit is really good. Comes with all the mounting spaces, bushes, for both the seat belt stalk and the seat belt. Comes with a nice set of instructions as well, makes them clear of what seatbelt you've got, and then more importantly, how to mount it so it works correctly. There's no point fitting a seatbelt if it's not going to work correctly. So this is the instructions I'm following, this 45-degree leaning forward. So I've got the instructions and I've read them carefully. So I've mounted the seatbelt, the retractable seatbelt now. That's the top tether where the mount originally was. So I've mounted that into the same hole, so that's all fine. And now I've got to mount that seatbelt down in that position where it's sitting now. You can see I checked it and make sure it locks in at that 45-degree angle, and it does. So I'm going to drill a hole just in that spot there, and that's the reinforcing plate that was in the kit. That goes up behind that panel. And the bottom of the seatbelt just mounts to the normal bottom position that it was originally there. So what I'm doing now is I'm just going to mark out where I'm going to mount the seatbelt retractor. So I'll just center punch it first, and then drill a small pilot hole. I think it's like a 3.5 mil pilot hole through the panel and through the trim. Then I get a cardboard template just so I can transfer the exact same mounting hole to the other side. So I triangulate that off some holes that mount for the parcel shelf mount. There's a parcel shelf panel that bolts onto that area, and those bolt holes are the same and symmetrical on both sides. So I'm just marking out those holes on the cardboard. Get a Sharpie just to clearly define where I've marked the holes. Mark out what's front and what's rear. So then I'll transfer this now to the other side. So again, I'll go to the other side of the car. Line up the holes down the bottom because they're exactly the same on the other side. And just basically just drill straight through the hole that I've marked in the bit of cardboard. Now I've got to make that hole to 12 mil. So I get my little step drill out and drill that out to 12 mil. So there's the reinforcing plate. I've just tacked the nut onto that plate. I've also drilled 2 small holes in the inner panel just so I can tack through to that plate. I'm just going to tack it in place so it doesn't move, so I don't have to worry about it falling out all the time. So there's I've bolted it in place, and there's the 2 holes. Now I've got the MIG out and just tack that into position. So just remembering this has all got to be inspected by the engineer again to make sure that this satisfies all the requirements. So there we go, I tacked both sides in, and now it's all nice and secure. So here's the seatbelt and how it works on the car. It locks in nicely and it's all melted up solid, and it's got the new seatbelt store ready to go. Okay, so the next steps are I'm going to get a wheel alignment done. I'm taking it to an actual proper wheel alignment place for specialised suspension. Just with the camber plates, it's got adjustable little camber caster as well as normal toe. So I'm going to get that set up first. Once I've got that done, I've got an appointment with the engineer to get a final inspection on the car to get the final sign off. So some other things I've noticed with the car which I'm thinking about doing, I'm not sure, I'm interested in your guys' feedback. I'm thinking about putting electrical plug in the firewall and mounting you can get like 50 pin racework plugs, so it's all easy then to undo. You just unclip it and undo it. I'm thinking about maybe doing that, but I'm just not sure whether it's worth all the hassle for doing a 50 pin plug. It's just another connection that you've got to do. I've also noticed the gearbox is a fair bit, gets a bit noisy when it gets hot, especially in 4th gear once I'm driving along, so I might need to look into that. I'm also thinking about a surge tank. The way that I've got it set up at the moment with the pickup, I'm just using the old fuel tank that's in the car. I've got a little pickup going down to the very bottom of the tank, and when it gets below a quarter, if you go around a corner pretty hard, you hear the pump start to groan and whine as it gets cavitation. So it's obviously, I'm thinking about maybe sticking a surge tank. So I'd be interested if anyone has done a surge tank on an old 323 like these to see where they've put it. So I don't think you can put them in the boot because it's a hatchback, so there's no rear seat section blocking it off from the passengers. So I'm not sure whether you have to do an undercar or under bonnet surge tank, so be interested in if anyone's done that as well. So that's it for this video. The next video will be hopefully the final sign off from the engineer, so I'll give you that report as well. Thanks for watching. Don't forget, subscribe, like, and I'll see you in the next video, which will hopefully be a lot shorter than the distance between the last two. Bye for now.